Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 of Beyond the Finish Line with Joe Hardin. That's me, Joe Hardin.
Joe, tell us a little bit about your IT 100 coming up. How is
Okay.
your training coming along? What does that look like for you?
It's going pretty good. I don't know if I talked about it much, but I had a foot injury that I kind of kept silent for the most part. I may have taken on a bit more than I should have. I did an 8-hour, 24-hour, and I was really putting in some really big mileage, and I might have increased a little bit more than I should have. Um, as we all do, I love running almost too much. So I've got a coach that's kind of helping me, maybe not motivate me, but kind of pull the reins back a little bit on that. And it's going well. I've always hated speed work. And this week I had yesterday morning, I had a 20-minute warm up with like a 5x6 fartlek with like a 20-minute cool down. And it's the first time that I've just it was just like I felt like a fine-tuned machine for that speed work. So that's kind of a new feeling. So I guess big shout out to Matt Daniels. He's been a great run coach. I feel kind of lucky that I got him as a coach because he's a legit dude. He just came back from UTMB and he represented at Western States with some of the athletes that are on the Matt Daniels team. So I'm kind of stoked to have him as a run coach, and kind of it's just nice, right? All I do is wake up, open my calendar, boom, 90 minutes. All my work's laid out for me. It's been nice having that work off the table. It's like I'm the greatest form of self-care as an ultra runner is just like subbing out the stuff that someone else should be doing anyways. And I've really been digging having a run coach. And I feel really stoked to take on a 100-miler. I've got some good overnight runs in my belt now. That's always been my struggle, is running throughout the night. I get real tired and I kind of go dark, as we all do. But I've learned to kind of lean into it. Like I notice that running through the dark now almost becomes like a blanket for you. It's just like you just kind of settle in, and so I'm stoked. It's a 30-hour cutoff. That's got me nervous. I'm not fast by any means. That's something I'm working on. It's a nice flat course, nice runnable course. Hopefully I get to go preview the course here in a month. It's only 2 hours from my house, so that's even better. It's like a family-owned race directing company, the Ignite Trail series. So I'm fired up. A lot of unknowns, right?
Well, just behind the scenes, I've been talking to Simon. We're going to look to reschedule with him. He said he's on holiday starting today, so we can reschedule. And if we can do it earlier in the day for us, which is evening for him in the UK, we can do that. But I have a funny story about Matt Daniels. So I raced Rocky Raccoon one year, and my goal, one of my goals for racing that year, because he was racing as well, was to make sure I finished my 4th loop before he finished his 5th loop. And I was about 3 3/4 of the way through the 4th loop when he went screaming past me. Like I was just standing there, and I was like, man, I missed by like 3 or 4 miles. It wasn't that, it wasn't a ton. But it just goes to show you how some of these athletes are just out of this world when it comes to being able to run, the way they do. They've been blessed with the talent that they have to do that. Another funny story I have is I was racing Western States in 2019, and I got to Forest Hill, which is the 100K mark basically. And one of my pacers was like, well, dude, just so you know, Jim Walmsley just finished the race. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I got 38 miles to go and he's done. Like, it's just incomprehensible.
Yeah, that feeling is incomprehensible, especially when I was just talking to somebody yesterday who did Bigfoot 200, and as you know, it was an out and back this year. As they were coming back to White Pass High School, as this person was leaving, the first place finisher was coming and finishing in 45 hours. This guy named Vernon, who has one other thing on Ultra Sign Up.
It's crazy how fast some of these people are. But I think that goes to the strength of our platform is that some of the athletes that we're talking to, like what was the cutoff for Bigfoot? 105 hours?
Yeah, like 107 or something like that.
107 hours, right? So, it's amazing to be done in 45 hours. It's also amazing to still be moving after 106 and a half to get to the finish line by 107. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, there are some phenomenal stories out there, man. For Tahoe 200, just real quick, the last finisher was apparently an older gentleman in the masters category who has
Be
diabetes.
careful about talking about the masters category, okay?
No.
So close.
Oh man, I should have looked at my audience before I did that. My co-host. Yeah, this guy had a adult like onset diabetes and finished the race, and it was his first 200, and he was like I think 10 minutes before the final cutoff, and it was just the coolest thing ever. And man, and I love watching the first people are amazing too, but man, those last people like pushing their relative best just out there, like man, and like everybody making a tunnel. It's just one of the things I really love about the sport, and I hope that we continue to embody that in what we do at Run Try Bike as well, making sure that everybody knows that they have a place at the start line and the finish.
I remember years ago, I paced at Bandera, and I was pacing Allie Miller, and she's uber fast, dude. Like, I think she finished third female at Ure. The year I paced her, like, I mean, she's up there, super, super talented. And I paced her at Bandera. Whatever time she finished, I have no idea. But we went back to the Airbnb, showered, ate, slept, woke up, and was leaving the next morning, and people were still on the course. And it's like, holy shit. Think about what I did, in eating, sleeping, relaxing. And those people were moving all throughout the night. And kudos to them for doing it, because that is just as impressive as being able to, finish a 100-miler in 14, 15 hours, or, the times that we're seeing people set these days. It's kudos to them.
Sometimes I wonder if I'd have the mental capacity, because you and I were both out there at Tahoe, and I finished maybe 22 hours ahead of the cutoff. And I went, I was dead tired. I had a pizza. I went to the Airbnb. We both knocked out. Woke up the next morning, had breakfast, casually went to the start line. There were still people finishing the race. And I'm like, I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't take a shower that evening.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I had a breakdown when we were finishing Heavenly. I was like, I'm not fucking doing this, man. Like, Joe, I don't know if we told you this story, but so we get to it's called the Heavenly Loop. We call it the Heavenly Loop anyway. And you run through, you run behind the gondola and everything, the ski slope and everything else, and you come around to the finish. And it's probably like 7 or 8 miles.
Yeah, and the mentally tough part is like 5 miles before you get to the finish, you can see the lights of like town.
Yeah. And so you're going through this process, and it had gotten cold. It's really freezing. I'm already, Aum was like, I got to take a 2-minute nap. And I'm like, dude, let's just finish this thing. And he's like, I got to take a 2-minute nap. And I'm like, it's 2 minutes. Like, this is not going to help you, but okay. So he takes his nap, and I'm trying to get things situated, and we start moving again, and we get to this point, and there's an arrow, and it's literally pointing up on the sign, but up is up the ski slope, and you can't see the rest of the trail. And I look at Aum, and I'm like, fuck this, I'm not going up there. I'm not fucking doing this. We've been climbing all night. I'm tired. Fuck this. I'm not doing any more climbing. You're gonna DNF, because we're making a left and we're going back to the start, which I can see. It's right there. Why would we climb this fucking mountain again? I'm not doing it. We took 10, 15 steps, and right after the arrow, the trail is there that bears left. And so you could see it. But I mean, look, we're talking about people that were going to take another 15, 20 hours to finish. And I was already angry, right? So now imagine moving us 15 hours back and having to continue to it's hard for me to fathom, but congratulations to those athletes that keep doing those things for that length of time, because that is super impressive. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, of
It's-
course, yeah, totally. I've been DFL, so I can appreciate that long grind on certain occasions. So, absolutely, definitely.
What do you do? Like, did you know you were DFL at the time, Joe?
I had no idea because the Momofo was so spread out. Like I didn't even see the podium people lap me. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know when that happened. But I mean, when I was like in my death march. But it was me and this one guy. We ran together for probably, I mean, 15 miles together. And yeah, I had no idea until I crossed the line, and the race director was like, "All right," like, you know, of course they made a big deal about it, which made me really happy. But I had no idea. I was just ready to get it done. You know, it's like, my goodness. But
Were you pushing cutoffs at that point?
I I wasn't pushing any cutoffs between the loops at all. That last 20 miles was just so bad. Like, I didn't even know that you could hurt that bad. Like, and I just could barely put together like a run. So I had no idea. But I think that ended up being a lot harder that was the first year of it too. And I think it was harder than everybody could have ever imagined, especially an Indiana race. But
What were you doing to keep yourself moving? Like, what was going through your head? How were you pushing yourself through?
Well, actually, I got to give a shout out to my friend Vinny Wood. He said something to me. Well, actually, I took something from Ohm too. Ohm said something to me that really struck me. I don't know if I ever told you this, Ohm, but you said something about. I'm paraphrasing you obviously here, but I remember I've heard you say something like you imagine old versions of yourself, like along the course when things get tough. And I use that a lot. I don't think I ever told you that. And then my friend Vinny Wood from SLO, California, he messaged me at some point in the middle of the night and said, if it's going to hurt, you're going to want to quit, but think about how you're going to feel tomorrow. And I use those two things for 15 hours. Like, I was just like, it was getting down to like simple things like little mantras, like run the mile you're in. Actually, you told me that. And then, I was just kind of having to make like a little song, like, all right, we're going to run from here to here. And just kind of like,
I love it.
yeah.
Like the
Like,
game you play as kids, like I'm gonna run to the lamp, I'm gonna run to the bench,
yeah. Yeah. I'd be like this trailblaze to that log, from this log to the bottom. Like, so me and this guy named Danny were doing that together at one point. I was saying out loud, and I probably sounded crazy, but, he joined me. He's like, all right, man, I'm in. So
man,
we were
that's a great
working
one.
out a little system together. So yeah, I actually, I realized that I hoard people's motivation. So I just kind of use the mishmash of things that you said, Jason, things that you said, Vinny Wood. I just like to kind of mine other people's little phrases and kind of make my own little compilation of motivation for stuff like that.
There's a mindset coach that was on our show. That was a friend of mine, Krista, who gave me some great advice before Oregon 200, and it was something along the lines of like, she was kind of giving me a scientific version, but I'll give you like the Cliff Notes version of like just feeding off other people's energy. Like when you go to the aid stations, when you see people on course saying good job, giving fist bumps, there's actually a chemical reaction to that, as well as a mental reaction. And so like it almost benefits you to like go out there and like say good job, buddy, and like you're doing great. And you also don't know how much it helps people when you tell them like me as both the pacer and a runner saying like, I know it's hurting, but you're doing great, like you're moving, dude, or like just those little things just go a long way. And I gotta agree with the run the mile that you're in. Jason once put it in a way where he said like, I can't run 1 mile. I can't run 100 miles, but I can run 1 mile 100 times. And I've
Yeah.
continuously used that mantra throughout this year, to the point where when I had my Coros, I kept it on average pace mode. And so it would only show me the actual mile that I'm in. So I just played this little game with the mile that you're in, until I finished X number of miles and just broke it down into a mile at a time.
Yeah, I did the same thing with mine too. That I noticed that helped. I didn't even have like the mileage up on my watch. Same thing. I was just like looking at my lap time, and I was like kind of keeping an eye on my heart rate just to make sure it wasn't getting too like real high. That seems like to be like the best. Like if I like govern my heart rate, I noticed, you know, I don't get too high, too as long as it doesn't creep in like the 150s. Kind of if I keep it like that sweet spot, like that 136, 140-ish range, I noticed that I can, I feel like I can run forever. I mean, I've only been 65 miles, not only, that's a weird thing to say, 65 miles, but
we all make that mistake.
Sounds preposterous when you think about it in terms of the grand scheme of 65 miles. But yeah, like same thing. I just don't even look at that. I just don't even look at my total mileage anymore. All it does is hurt. But
where would you be if you drove 1 hour at 65 miles an hour from your house? Like, where would you end up?
I mean, almost I could probably be to my in-laws. Maybe I would be. I mean, Indianapolis I could go to Indianapolis and back, and that, yeah.
Right. Like when people are like, I only did this, you got to put it in perspective, right? San Diego's 2 hours from us? It's like 130 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd be halfway to San Diego if you ran 65 miles.
It's insane. I'd be to San Diego into the border of Mexico if I did Tahoe going in that direction. And it's all flat. So
here's a question for you, Joe. You brought up heart rate, and anybody who knows me for the past 17 years knows like my mantra for racing is all gas, no brakes. And I don't pay attention to paces. I don't pay attention to my heart rate. And the reason why I don't pay attention to my heart rate is because I'm going to take the day off tomorrow, like the day after the race. Like I don't need to save myself for the next training run or the next whatever. Like the next day is recovery. And so I just go out there as hard as I can. And Lori has told me not to tell people to do this because I may be the only person she knows that can, get to zone 5 and then hold it for 3 to 4 hours. Why do you care what your heart rate is when you're racing? Like your goal is to get from A to Z as fast as you can. So is it because you're questioning either your training or you want to make sure that you have juice at the end? Like, why are you looking at your heart, especially on a trail run? You're going to go up, you're going to go down. Like your heart rate's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, I just noticed if obviously on big, like on climbs and stuff, it is going to go up. But I just noticed if I just like tack it out early, I noticed that I run out pretty quickly. I guess same thing pretty quickly. Maybe for like my sub 20 mile stuff, I don't have to worry about it as much, I've noticed. But especially like backyards, I like to just keep it like, I seem like if I keep it nice and cool, and like that zone 2 range, I mean, I can just I can shuffle that, that zone forever, it seems like. But
yeah, but I think backyards are a different animal, right?
Yeah.
Because the finish line isn't known in that scenario. So conserving your energy, walking, if you can walk, a 13-minute pace, you'll be done in 52 minutes. You sit there, you get your liquids or whatever, and you start again. So I can understand wanting to control yourself in that environment. But if you're in a race that's not do the 4 miles repeatedly, like a backyard ultra is, when you're in a race, like a marathon or a 50K or whatever it is, like throughout your training, your heart rate and your pace should come to a point where, well, if I run 12-minute miles, making it up, my heart rate is going to sit in zone 2, zone 3. So let me just go race. And that's kind of my philosophy. Like I know at some point where my pace and my heart rate are going to meet, that's where I'm at. And that's where I'm going to go and race at. And I might push the envelope in some scenarios. Like if it's a downhill, I'll push it hard. If it's flat, I'll push it hard, knowing that at some point I'm going to hit the uphill climb and now I can trek and my heart rate's going to come back down in that situation.
I definitely agree with that. I think I've started with I definitely use heart rate in training, but there's a lot of times where I kind of like mix it up with like understanding feel, because sometimes your heart rate monitor doesn't tell the full story.
Yeah.
And especially in the 200, like I'll look down at my stats or whatever at the end. And it's like my heart rate was in zone 1 most of the time because you're not moving that fast.
Right.
And then I just like, I think the biggest thing for me is just starting out slow. Like, Peter really emphasized this in me, Peter Mortimer, my coach, but it's something that I used to really, when I started out, make the rookie mistake of trying to like bank time, like knowing that I was going to be hurting at the end, instead of having the sheer confidence that like, if I am just managing myself, that, and I'm not overstriding, that I'm going to be able to like empty the gas tank when it's time in the second half of the
Yeah.
race.
See, I would argue the idea of banking time in an ultra as being a something that you can do, because we aren't Jim Walmsley, we aren't Ian Sharman, we aren't David Roche, we aren't Courtney DeWalter, right? We're going to get slower, like zero doubt, right? Death, taxes, and getting slower at 100 is guaranteed. So, right. But if you can run, if you're capable of running and again, I'm making numbers up. If you can run a 10-minute mile for 10 minutes versus the 11-minute mile for that amount of time, you've just saved 10 minutes, which on the back end, if your hike at that point goes from 17 minutes to 17:15, right? You still have enough, you've still saved enough time on the front end to capture it on the back end. Like, I don't know that you can do this for a marathon, a road marathon. I don't think that that's feasible. But I will say, like, for 100K and 100 mile, I think it's totally feasible to run in bank time, shall we say, because we're all going to get slower on the end. So again, if your slow goes from 17 to 17:15, but my pushing the envelope slightly goes from 11 to 10, I'm making up 45 seconds every single mile in that scenario over the front end, right? And if you start doing the math, and you want to finish a race in 100-mile race in 24 hours. So your pace has to be about 14:30. If you've run 10, 11, 12-minute miles in the beginning, then all of a sudden on the back end, you could still run 16, 17, 18-minute paces or hiking and still reach that 24-hour number. And so when I'm planning a strategy out, like that's what I'm looking at when it comes to running 100Ks and 100 milers. So I think you can bank time. That's not to say if you want to run 10-minute miles that you should run 7-minute miles and really just burn all the matches. Say if you're planned at 11 minutes, but you run 10:30, like don't beat yourself up. Like that's okay.
Yeah. And I've definitely like, it's interesting. I've definitely surprised myself in a lot of ways through my work, like through my training. Like there are times where like banking time isn't really my first priority. It's more about like just feeling good and being at that 11-minute pace or that 10-minute pace. And then I'll look up at where I'm at the aid station and I'm like, man, I'm ahead of where I wanted to be, and I'm feeling pretty good. But yeah, I think my biggest thing is just making sure that like I'm not overstriding early and then I just let it rip afterwards. I think there's a thing that I've definitely done in the past. Sometimes you get caught up with other runners, especially talking in 100 and a 200. You get caught up with people's paces. There's a lot of frenetic energy. Like, I'm not saying you can tell who the people are who are doing it the first time, but you can tell who the people are who are doing it the first time. And it's funny, like I look back at my chart and somebody was pointing out, man, you started out like upper back of the pack, lower middle of the pack at all, like Tahoe and Bigfoot, and then you worked your way into the top third. Why did that happen? And it's just because like I think it all comes down to no matter what your strategy is, whether it's all gas, no brakes, or like having like that having like that management. I think management really is the key, like body management. Like, how well do you know yourself and your style? Because there are people who are like Jason and Zach Miller who who really excel at their style, and then there's people who start out kind of slow and steady and are able to like pull out the gas, But I think it's just about like getting to know yourself better through each one. And I think with you, Joe, like having that DFL experience at the Momofo is only going to help you improve because it's going to teach you more about like how you react in those like painful situations, and how you can adapt those to future races, whether it's like nutrition or whatever went wrong, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, I got my ass kicked, but I definitely learned a lot. And I guess I will. I guess I'll add. I don't let the heart rate like if I'm feeling like I need to push, I won't let it like stop me from pushing too. But like I will. I don't let it dictate everything that I do. But I think the Momofo was just like such a rarity for like I thought I was ready for vertical. And like man, it was just like the Momo, like Morgan Monroe Forest is not like anything that I've like in this state. It's like its own world right there. And
How much vert was the Momofo?
I think it was almost 10,000.
Oh my god! And
Or yeah, I
I'll let
think it
you
was.
finish, but I wanted to ask this to Rose about her Ironmans when we did the fireside chat, but I want to ask you this as well. You live in a generally flat area, so I'm wondering like what you do to train for something like that.
I live on the like here coming up. I've already kind of started the stair mill, but especially now, I'm like 60 or 70 days away from 100 miler. I've been going into the gym a few days a week and just like 150 flights, 150 flights, 150 flights, like, and I do like a ton of box steps right here in this room, and I do a lot of those. I've been doing a ton more core work because my legs, like 100K, my legs could have went another. I think my legs would have went another 100K. It was my core. I was like basically half in the fetal position. Like, thank goodness I had, yeah, thank goodness I had sticks. Like that was what was keeping me upright. I mean, otherwise I would have just folded over. My legs would have kept going, but yeah, it was all I could do to not be bent over. I was just like, oh, but so tons of core work. My core broke down, man. It was just, and
Core work
oddly
is
enough, I mean, and you both have a lot of stick experience. My arms are just so damn tired. So yeah.
Get the gym, kids. Get in the
Oh
gym.
man, hit those shoulder presses.
Right.
I mean,
So here's a fun,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Go
here's
ahead,
a funny
Jason.
story about that stuff. Like these races are so long, so many things are going to happen. So what was it? A couple of years ago, we did the Jackpot Ultras out in
Yeah.
Henderson, Nevada, and I did the 50-mile race, and I went out all gas, no brakes. I think after like the first 2 or 3 loops, I was actually leading the event, and then shit started to crumble, right? And I got passed by like 7 or 8 people. I went from like being in first place to ninth place in the matter of 1 loop, right? All these people kept passing me, but I stayed focused on myself and where I was and what I was doing, eating, drinking, and everything else. And I wound up moving from ninth place, and I think I was 6th or 7th male because I think there were 2 women that were ahead of us, and wound up finishing as the second male because those guys couldn't hold that super hard pace for the entire time. And I just was able to recuperate and bring myself around. And all that is to say, like, these races are never over, even though if they feel like they're over, because they are so long. They take so long and so much can change. And if you stay focused on where you're at the time, in the mile, running the mile you're in, that means, eating and drinking consistently, like everything is going to change. There's so many peaks and valleys. And the more you can level out those peaks and valleys, the better off you're going to be throughout the entire race. Like, so when you're out there for your 100, dude, you're going to go through valleys. Like there's zero doubt about it, right? There's going to be moments that are going to totally suck. You're going to be like, put me back in the fetal position. But you get through it, right? Make sure you have good crew, good pacers. You tell jokes, you have fun with it all. Like you'll get through it, and just make sure to do the things that you need to do, like eating and drinking, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of your problems, like it's amazing how many emotions you go through, and you simply just ask yourself, do I just need to eat something? Do I just need to drink something? It's amazing what your body does when your like blood sugar gets low and you need to eat like food, and then you eat it and like half an hour later, like that wasn't even an issue at all.
Right.
So just ask yourself when you go through a low, like, do I just need to eat something? Do I need to sip like a Coke or something? Like, and it could make all the difference.
and have the shit that you want to eat.
Oh my
right?
God. Yeah, I can't stress that enough.
I read posts from people all the time. They're like, I'm gonna stack my bag with like, and I love falafel. Don't get me wrong, but I'm gonna stuff it with falafel because it's vegan protein. And I'm like, you know how fucking dry that's gonna be out in the middle of
my
this race
God.
course, wherever you're at. Like, that's the worst thing I could possibly think of. Give me
My
a
mouth is
chocolate
getting
bar, give
dry
me some
just thinking about
Oreos, give me some, like, give me the shit that I'm gonna want to eat, not the thing I'm gonna take out of my hydration vest pouch and be like, I'm not eating that crap, because all that's gonna do is put you into a bigger deficit, right? Like, stuff the things that you want to eat. Like, I was having this conversation a couple of days ago. Again, tomorrow you can focus on going back to healthy eating, whatever that means, right? You're in a race, you need calories, you need carbs, you need sugars, you need to get from point A to point B right now. Do whatever you can. Don't think, oh my goodness, this is 40 grams of carbs and I can't eat this. Like, no, eat it, because your body's begging you for it, begging for that energy to get it from point A to point B at that point.
Oh yeah, and I think a big one with food and everything is find something like a candy or something. Like Jolly Ranchers were big for me because keep your mouth salivated, man. Because I've struggled so late in races with like eating food where it's like my mouth is too dry. Like keep your mouth salivated.
Fruit roll-ups.
Ooh,
chef's kiss.
Fruit roll-ups.
Is there a particular flavor of fruit roll-up?
I can't remember if it was like the cherry that I had. I just grabbed it. I just grabbed a few from our cupboard like that day. Like I just like, oh, these, boom.
They come in the stick, right? It's like a stick pouch.
Yeah, you just like, well, not fruit roll up, fruit by the foot. Sorry, the
oh
tank.
yeah.
I just pulled one out of my vest. It was like 3 a.m. I just like made like a little ball out of it. It was just like, oh, like it was like a nostalgic thing too. I was just like, oh my goodness.
It was, what?
The little pouches of Welch's fruit.
Man.
Oh yeah.
Right. They have those at almost every aid station at an ultra, and I just like take like 7 of them and throw them in my pouch because they're just like, they're not a lot of calories, but it's something to put in your mouth. You chew on it, distracts you for a few minutes.
I think a big slice of heaven for me at an aid station is walking in and having a cold Coke. And then after that, like chewing down a couple orange slices.
Oh, yeah, orange slices.
Those are just so good. Orange slices, cold grapes was a good one for me at Tahoe. Like something about cold fruit and like fruit and like just Coke, like just hits so good.
Dude, you bring up cold in Tahoe. It just reminded me. Remember when I was like, shit, I'm out of water. And I found that like water. We found that water fountain thing that was like, oh, just go down this path to the water fountain. Joe, I'm like parched, and I cannot take any water from Aum because he needs it way more than I do. He's racing, and we see this sign. It's like water fountain ahead or something. And I was like, Aum, go lay under the tree. I'm gonna go get some water. And the path is like 0.6 of a mile away, right? So I get to this water, and it's one of those hand pumps, right? And I get there, and like, I cannot wait for ice cold water. And the fucking thing is broken, dude. Like, I was like, oh no! Now I got to go 0.6 of a mile back up this hill to catch Aum with no water, and hope we can make it to the next aid station without my mouth feeling like sandpaper.
I think at that point we were still 6 or something miles out. We were going down, but we were still a few hours out.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough. Like my flask had a couple of sips in it that I could last to get to that aid station. That sucked. You know what happened was at the prior aid station, I didn't take the bladder all the way out. And I just kind of filled it, and I guess it was pressed closed at the bottom, so it filled like 2/3, 3/4 of the way.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah,
you don't want to take the whole thing out, but then it's like when you pull it out even more, like you just see the water level go down. Like, oh, I didn't put this whole thing. But then it's like it's such a pain in the butt to like throw it back in because it's like an albatross now, and like it's like those things are big, man.
Well, so here's the funny thing, right? You're racing 200 miles. It's going to take you, what, 83, 85 hours? And we're worried about getting a bladder into a vest that might take us 2 minutes. We got to get out of here. You'll be racing for 85 hours. We can take the 2 minutes to get the bladder in properly.
Oh, I could take the 2 minutes. I just wish I didn't have to. I just hate bladders, man. Like, if you know me, you know that I did not use a bladder at my 100-mile races because the aid stations are only 5 miles apart at that point. So I'm not using a bladder. And if I was even slightly faster, I would love to get away with just using handhelds, the whole time.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I've
honestly, like
never been
100
able to run
milers,
with
I use
one.
handhelds.
It's like too sloshy for me.
Yeah.
They're
For
worse.
100 milers, I use flasks, the two up front, and then I'll wear a naked belt, and I could put a flask in the back. So you're, I don't know, probably looking at what, 120 to 140 milliliters of liquid, which is enough, like Ohm said, somewhere between 5 and 7 miles between aid stations. It should be enough liquid to get you going, to keep you going.
That's
Yeah,
kind of
it's
my
funny
plan.
what
Two
it's
of
funny
them.
what experience will do for you in 100 too. Like, I think I carried the entire farm when I did my first 100, and now I feel like I could go to a 100 and be like, I don't need to pack this. I don't need drop bags. I'll just use whatever's at the aid station, and I'll be fine.
Yeah, I know at Black Canyon, the 100K, like my drop bags are like a little Ziploc bag with like a stick of scratch and a package of like a honey stinger waffle or something, or an untapped waffle. Like there's no clothing in there or anything. I'll put my headlamp in my vest so I don't have to worry about, what drop bag aid station did I put my headlamp in? Just put it in, keep it in my vest and keep it on me, and try to make that shit as easy as you possibly can. There are people I know, and look, everybody's different, but I've seen people with like those 5-gallon Ziploc bags.
Yeah.
They're just shuffling and rifling through things. And you know that their anxiety and their stress level is going up because they're like, I got to get out of here, but I can't find, this chapstick in a 5-gallon bag. And it's like, yeah, I mean, you could have carried the chapstick with
Carry
you.
the chapstick. But that reminds me, you have the Black Canyon is my favorite Jason DNF story ever. Like, it's just I don't know if you've told Joe that story about your DNF at Black Canyon.
Yeah, I was definitely not in 100K shape whatsoever. And we take the bus up to whatever the name of that high school is. It's, early in the morning and it is cold. And the first year I did it, they allowed you in the school, but then the COVID happened. They wouldn't. So now they don't let you in the gymnasium. And so I'm just sitting outside because I know it's going to get hot. So I'm in like a t-shirt. I'm freezing my ass off. So I'm burning energy, freezing my ass off. Anyway, the gun goes off. We're running. And I get to the marathon distance aid station, which is at Bumblebee. And I'm like, man, I don't feel good. Like I feel cold and it's like 85 degrees out. I'm like, this is a problem. And I'm sitting there and one of the aid station captains, he's like, do you want me to DNF you? And I'm like, no, just give it a few minutes. Cause he's like, the bus will come in an hour or something. I was like, when the bus comes, if I feel like I need to DNF, you can DNF me then. He's like, cool. This other volunteer comes over like 10, 15 minutes later, and bless her, she is so sweet. What do you need? What can I get you? How do you feel? Blah, blah, blah. And I said to her, yeah, I think I'm going to DNF. And she's like, are you sure? Are you sure? You don't want to DNF and everything else. Like she is so on top of me. And I just looked at her and I was like, is Jamil at the finish line with a big check for me? And her face was like, what is this guy talking about? I was like, if Jamil ain't paying me to finish this race, I don't need to finish this race. I'm done. I'm going home. I'm going to go sit in the cool weather. I'm going to go eat pizza. Like, I'm cool. Like, I've already done this race. And again, if he's not paying me to finish, I got no reason to finish.
That's great.
I thought about this earlier, right? We talk about DNS greater than DNF, greater than DFL, or whatever that stuff is. And it's like, man, I want to do this forever. We joked about being a master earlier. I'm 50 years old. I'd love to keep doing this until I'm 70, but I can't do this until I'm 70 if I fall under the pressure of social media that says, well, don't take a DNS, at least give it a try. Yeah, but what if my hip is killing me? And running a mile might end up with me on the operating table getting surgery and I can't run forever. Or don't DNF, just keep moving forward. Got it. I want to do my best too. But what if my leg again is so wrecked because I took a hard fall and it compromises me to not be able to run for the next 10, 15, 20 years because I fell under the guise of, go hard all the time, right? Like, I think that when we keep professing that type of gatekeeping, even though we don't think of it as gatekeeping, people will see that and start to eke themselves away from these sports because they're like, no, this is not that important. I don't need to put myself in harm's way and in jeopardy just to appease, Jane in Joplin, Missouri, or Steve in St. Louis. Like, do the thing that's right for you. So you're an N equals one experiment. Do the thing that makes sense for you. At that Black Canyon race, I had already done it once. I didn't need to finish it again to feel accomplishment or anything like that. I wasn't feeling well. I was cold, even though it was hot outside. So clearly something was wrong. I take my DNF and move on in life.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, previously I was kind of I was like exposed to like mindset of like all or nothing, but same thing. It's like I've fallen in love with this sport so much now. If I don't, I'm not making excuses early, but if something doesn't feel right, I would do the same thing at my 100-miler because there'll be more down the road, right? I mean, I want to be in the sport as long as I can, and I'm not gonna like get wrapped up in some kind of all or nothing or get hurt or go kind of mentality. So yeah, that's I love that perspective though.
I just interviewed a guy, Dave Cook. His story is going to come out on our website here in the next week or so. He's 76 years old. He started doing triathlon at 68.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That's damn cool, man.
That's
right?
rad.
But you can't be participating at 76 if you've run yourself into the dumpster at 50, at 40, at 30. And then those other things can also lead to burnout, right? If you're constantly going hard all the time, eventually your body's going to catch up to you and be like, sorry, time to shut her down. Sickness, injury, any one of those things is going to happen. And you're going to be like, yeah, I don't want to do this. And then it's going to be hard to get back into it because your mindset is going to be, I'm afraid of what might happen because you've pushed yourself into that predicament. So do the thing that's right for you. We talk about run the mile that you're in, run your race. Do the thing that's important to you. Don't worry about what kudos you get on Strava or on, Instagram or TikTok or whatever. That shit's going to come and go. I bet you if you asked anybody today, how many likes did you get on a post from 3 weeks ago? They're going to be like, I don't fucking know. That's the point.
And like Jason and I talk about this all the time, but like, I think there's when things like the Hard Rock or the Western States or something happen, because we're so engrossed in this sport, because we're in this endurance sports community, we think the whole world is watching this thing. The whole world is watching Cocodona, but we realize that's, the sport's only like, if you're talking about 1% being like marathoners in the world and a smaller fraction of that being like people who do these long distance ultras exist, like it's really a small bubble. And I think it took me a while, but I really realized that like we have to like dim on and off. There's really no balance. You got to dim on and off the different light switches in your life. And for me, that's like, after the Triple Crown is over, I'm ready to take 2-3 weeks off and just kick my feet up and, turn the light switch on like other aspects of my life, like running this business, and like, and my family, and my loved ones who sacrifice for me to be able to do this thing just as much as I do. And like, I think that sometimes we get so caught up in the sport. I once made it like a big part of my, like the biggest part, if not my entire identity. I was Aum the ultra runner. And then I realized that that's just one facet of my life. And I got to tell you, man, I'm excited to take like I'm taking 6 months of like no racing after the Triple Crown, and I'm really excited to do that. Like pumped up, and you want to get to the point where like I think the biggest tips that all the veterans I've talked to have given me, the older people I've talked to, is you got to keep it interesting and you got to keep it fun. It might be like there are people going around asking me personally, like, are you going to do more 200s? What's next? Are you going to do Cocodona? Are you going to do Divide? And I'm like, hell no, I'm going to go run a 5K. That sounds more exciting.
And all of this is to say, we are going to be your loudest cheerleaders. Like, Joe, when you line up for the IT 100, you're not going to hear people louder than us. We're going to yell our asses off for you. that doesn't mean that if you DNF for whatever reason, we're going to be the most disappointed. We're still going to celebrate the shit out of you because you had the courage to start. Like, we're going to be your cheerleaders from start to finish, whatever that finish means. Crossing the 100-mile finish line, fantastic. DNF at mile 72, fantastic. Like, we're going to be there as loud as we can possibly be for you, because the whole point is to enjoy the journey and create the memories and have the stories when all is said and done. Because again, when you're on your deathbed, nobody's going to be like, what was your time at IT 100 in 2024? Like, nobody's going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, I've already forgot my time at my 100K. I was just like, oh, I mean, I did it, right? And thank you. So that actually, that kind of got me in the feels, you saying that. So I appreciate it. It's been a number I've been weirdly obsessed about for a very long time. I'm starting to really get I'm starting to really get fired up for it too. So yeah, it means a lot. It's, I think I'm ready. I'm ready.
Don't hold back when you cross the finish line either, man. Celebrate the living shit out of it. Like, that's a huge accomplishment. Celebrate the shit out of it. Have fun with it. It's a massive accomplishment. Enjoy it. Tell the world about it. Stand on your soapbox. Climb to the top of the mountain with the bullhorn. Yeah. Like, celebrate it. You've done something. You had a goal. You went after your goal. You achieved your goal. Like, definitely celebrate it, and enjoy it and bathe in the accomplishment of it all, and it doesn't matter what time. Honestly, it just doesn't.
No. And we'll celebrate with you. And man, honestly, like, if I could go back to my first one, I would say to you, embrace all the feelings, like leading up to this race, like the pre-race, like going back, man, there's nothing like the feeling I had. I've done 6 of those 100s now. There's nothing like the feeling I've had at my first 100, like that feeling of like towing the line, knowing you're doing a new distance, like just that journey, like just embrace all the emotions.
I'm glad he had positive memories of his first 100 then.
We all have, that's the problem. We always have positive memories in hindsight.
Bullshit. No. My first 100 sucked. It was hard as hell. It was awful. It rained everywhere. There was no flags to find the damn trail. It was freezing overnight. I mean, dude, it was awful.
Dude, don't get me wrong. I was DFL in my first 100. I had like trench foot. My feet were messed up. I couldn't eat for like 30 miles. Like, I was on one foot. Like, it's so funny, like how in hindsight I'm like, man, that was shit. But man, all those people were good and those memories were good. But like, we have a short-term memory for pain.
That first 100 was probably the hardest one I've done, in all honesty.
That was the Pinhoti Trail, right?
Lake Martin 100.
Oh crap!
And it's also in Alabama though. But yeah, it was brutal. It rained constantly. I mean, there was like what should have been a stream crossing was like a river. Shit was washed out. It was awful. Like, and again, it's your first 100. I didn't have any clue as to what you do with these hundreds because I don't know that there was a lot of information because I did my first 100 probably 12 years ago. And so I don't know if there was as much information out there as there is now. And man, I just didn't know anything. Like, I didn't know anything about aid stations or hydration vests or liquids. Like, I just didn't know any of that crap. And it was brutal, man. Like, and I was unprepared for the super cold temps overnight. Because look, if you tell me I'm going to Alabama, I'm assuming it's going to be hot and humid. I'm not going to assume that it's cold, right? It was cold overnight. Like, I borrowed an aid station worker's gloves. I was like, my hands are freezing. Can I borrow your gloves? You kind enough to say yes. It was just awful. And the idea that I would then run 7 more after that, that's the miracle. Because after that first experience, I was like, there's no way I'm doing this shit again. Like,
yeah, I'm stoked. I'm glad I did all the work leading up to it. I feel like I've got some good experience like coming into it. I've done some 50s now, and I'm really glad I took on a lot in the last year, but I'm so glad I did because I got same thing. It's like I got a good understanding, better understanding of like running through the night and nutrition. And I mean, I know like going an extra 40 miles on top of what I've already been is going to be uncharted territory. But I'm like really excited for that unknown too. But also, I feel like I've learned a lot in the last. I've only been ultra running for a year, which is wild. But I mean, yeah, just a little over a year. But
dude, like Lori said when she did her 100, if I get to mile 80, I will finish. And so just get yourself to mile 80, because once you're at mile 80, as long as you're not bumping up against cutoffs, you'll be fine. You'll get to that finish line.
Yeah, I always find 60 to 80 I have always found are the toughest miles in the 100. Once you get to 80, you start to smell the barn.
Yep.
Nice.
I've always said the 100-mile race starts at mile 60, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Because if you've run a 50 or 100K, you know that distance. You've been there before. And then for a lot of people, the mindset sets in. It's like, holy shit, I got another 40 to go. But if you break it down and you get yourself to mile 80, you've done probably, a handful of 20-mile training runs. So then that mindset kicks in at mile 80 and you're like, I've done 20-mile training runs. I can do another 20 miles. No problem. I shouldn't say no problem, but I've done it before. I've been here before and I can do it again, kind of thing. So the race really does take place between miles 60 and 80 at 100 mile from my experience.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for this. I mean, I'm bummed we didn't get Simon on, but honestly, this talk was good for my soul. Honestly, I'm glad we got to have this. I needed this conversation. Didn't know it until just now. So
we're here to help, brother. Reach back out to Simon because he does want to get back on the show, and we'll just schedule it whenever you're ready. And if you want, schedule it for 9 a.m. Pacific time, so noon your time, which I think is 5 o'clock p.m. his time. So that'll give him some. This way it'll be early evening and we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, silver lining, we got to have this great chat, and I'll get Simon back on because super rad guy. So yeah, we'll get him back on.
Cool. This is a little BTS of BTFL.
Yeah, it is.
Have a great one, guys. I'll see you guys.